اوكي. هيك
هذا اللي انا بسويه، اتركه اخر شيء.
ما عندي رخاء.
ما عندك صوت انت؟
عندي صوت.
خلص
لا انا قصدي
انا ما عندي صورة هون. عم اطلع من هيك. ما بعرف بدنا نشوف الصوت طلع ولا لا.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. The Sheikh starting by making a dua and asking Allah Azza wa Jal to accept from us and enable us to fast the rest of Ramadan. We are with the series of the translation of the Quran or the explanation of the Quran. The example of those who spend their money in the sake of Allah, just like as a grain that has 7 branches, and for each one there is 100 grains, and Allah could multiply to whomever He wish, and Allah multiply to whomever He wish as much as He wish. So Allah Azza wa Jal has given for this multiplication an example. Look at the way that the Quran and the preciseness of Allah's expression. Because someone might say, how did Allah give that example of the grain? How do we explain that? How do we the example of those who spend their money like a grain? Well, there is a simple explanation that Allah Azza wa Jal is like Allah saying the example of those who spend he spent their action as one grain where you plant that one and Allah Azza wa Jal gets 700 grains out of it or more. Or could be in the news itself. It would be like the example of those who spend their money in the sake of Allah, just like someone who had planted a seed, and then each one has 7 branches, each one has 100 seeds. So either the action of the believers or the believers as the seed. And this is from the strength of the Quranic expressions. So the example will be for the action and the person who did it as well. To spend the money is what people get from things that could benefit them, like the money, the silver, the equity, like cars and livestock, or the rental stuff, like the benefit. That's why it's even accepted to be as a dowry in the the example of Musa when he traveled to Midian, and the guy told him, I will hire you for 8 years, and so that was for some money, also in the sake of Allah and the path of Allah and the guidance that He is given. Allah said, and this is my straight path, then follow it, and do not follow the other road that's going to deviate you from the path of Allah. Why it was added? Because it is that what Allah allowed for His servants, because it will lead to it. Sometimes the way is for those who take the path and they walk into it. When Allah said, and they follow the path that is different from the path of the believers. So the road itself was attributed to the believers. And also for the disbelievers, they have their own path, because they will be abundance in riding or taking that path. And there is what a difference between the two paths, the believers and the misguided. And this is an example that Allah Azza wa Jal gave to show the multiplication of the charity It's not a limit of 700, because Allah Azza wa Jal after that said, and Allah multiply to whomever He wish as much as He wants. Allah is wide, He can do whatever He wants, and He can make that multiplication as much as He wants. He is very wide in all His knowledge, in all His attributes, from His knowledge, His mercy, His all His attributes. He's wide and He's knowledgeable in everything. His knowledge covered everything. So His knowledge covered everything in all details, past, present, and future. What even the possibility and the statistics of might happen, or how it's going to happen. Allah ordered us. He ordered the Prophet with a charity, and He said, say, this is a message from Allah the Almighty to humanity from His messenger. Say to my servant that believed. Listen when Allah mentioned that. Say to my servant that they believed, to establish their prayers and to spend from what Allah has gave them or sustained to them, in secret and in declaration. Before a day comes in, there is no selling or no buying, and there is no friendship or no relatives. So fear Allah as much as you can, and remember and spend. It is good for yourself and whomever was prevented the misery of himself, the bigotry of himself. He has given a lot of gift from Allah, a lot of bounty. The charity is a proof, because Allah said, and that who gave and believe in the Husna, in the paradise, Allah Azza wa Jal correlated between the two, just like He had correlated between being miser and the denial. From the bounties of the charity and its goodness, that it is distinguish Allah's anger. The charity of the secrecy, it distinguish Allah's anger, as it was narrated in the hadith, that it wipes the sin, and the charity distinguish the sin, just like water distinguish the fire. And the charity, it is a protection from the fire. Allah's messenger said, protect yourself from the fire even with a half a date. The origin of this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, no one among you, except that Allah will talk to him at the Day of Judgment. There is no translator between them. And then he looked to his right, and he can find nothing but what He provided, and his left, and he will find nothing but what He provided. And from his around him, he will find the hellfire in front of his face. So fear or protect yourself from the hellfire, even with a half a date. The one who gives charity, he is under the shade of his charity at the Day of Judgment. In the hadith, every person is under his charity until it is divided between people, until it's separated between people. The shaking of the hour is a great matter, where every breastfeeder will stay away from her infant, and every pregnant woman will give her birth, and you find people intoxicated, and they're not intoxicated, but the nourishment of Allah is great, is big, and you will find people in great burden, and they're afraid, and they are sweating. They have never sweat like this before. Some of them, they drown in their own sweat. At that time, you need a shade. You need something to shade you, something to cover you, something to relieve you. So every person under the relief, under the shade of his charity, until it is decided between people, until their things are done. One of the companions, he will always find a way to give a charity, even if it is little, no matter what, because Allah Azza wa Jal takes the small just like He takes the big charity. and that companion was even to give even an onion, because he heard the Prophet ﷺ saying that one of the people that Allah will put under his charity is someone who give a charity and he hid it where his left did not know what his right hand has spent. Also, the charity is secure for people. Allah's Messenger said that treat your sick people with the charity. Ibn Shaqiq says that I heard Ibn al-Mubarak, one of the scholars, and he's talking about something that happened to his knee, and he tried all types of medications and he could not find anything could be beneficial, and he was told dig a well for a place of people who needs water, maybe Allah will heal your knee. So he did, and Allah healed his knee. But this is for those who believed in Allah and he knew that Allah's promise is true. It is charities also has a cure for the heart diseases, because they do get sick just like the bodies. Allah said that the hypocrites, they have disease in their hearts, and Allah increase in their disease where they can't see. The Prophet said someone came to the Prophet complaining about the hardship of his heart. He said, if you to make it lenient, he said, feed the needy and wipe the head of the orphan. The charity, Allah will protect His people. The advice of Yahya to sons of Israel, I order you with a charity. Its example is like a man that people captured him, and they tied him to his neck and they want to kill him, and he said, I will pay a ransom to get myself free, and he did. That's how the servant does at the day of judgment. He can protect himself, he can free himself from the destruction at the day of judgment, and by giving charity. The person will never reach the piety except the level of piety except through charity. Allah said you will not reach piety until you spend from what you love, and you will not spend anything except Allah will know about it. The one who spent everything pray for him, except for two angels who will come and will say, give spender replacement. The charity will increase in the money. No charity will decrease from the charity will never decrease the money, the principle of people. Nothing will stay from your money except what you give in a charity, because everything is wasted in this life, and the charity stays with Allah. It stays in your saving account for the day of judgment, and Allah will give it to you at the day of judgment, where you're not going to be done wrong. When the Prophet ﷺ asked Aisha about the small lamb that he slaughtered, they said, if everything is gone except the only thing left is the shoulder. So he told her, no, Aisha, the shoulder is wasted and all of it is saved with Allah. Allah Azza wa Jal multiply for the people who give the charity, because Allah said those who give charity, male and females, and give alone for Allah, Allah will multiply for them, and they have great tournament who will give Allah Azza wa Jal and Allah will multiply His reward. The people with the charity who will be asked from a single gate called the gate of charity. Just like in for fasting you have the gate of Aryan, also there is a gate for charity. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever spend double, he will be called, oh son or servant of Allah, this is good. So the people from the who did the jihad, they will be called from the gate of jihad, and those who are from the people of the uh, charity that we call from charity, and prayers from the gate of prayer, al-rayyan from for people who fast. And then somebody asked, would anybody be asked to called to heavens from all gates? He said yes, and I hope that you are among them. From the goodness of charity, that every time is combined with in the hadith of Abu Hurairah, the Prophet ﷺ asked his companions, who woke up today fasting? Abu Bakr said, yes, me. He said, who followed a janazah? He said, I did. He said, who went and visited a sick person? He said, I did. The Prophet ﷺ said, they're not combined with anyone, he will enter Jannah. And one day you have those three characters of charity, fasting, and following the deceased and the funeral, and visit the sick, Allah will enter Jannah. Also, the one who gives charity, at the day of judgment, he will be in the highest levels. The Prophet ﷺ said, this life is for four people. A person that Allah give him wealth and knowledge, and he fear Allah Azza wa Jal with his piety, and he give his kinships, and he knows there is right for Allah, and this is from the greatest statuses, greatest level. And the Prophet ﷺ made that rich with the spending, just like the level of reciters of the Quran. There is no envy except into a person that Allah has given him the Quran, and he is implementing during the day and night, and a man that Allah gave him wealth and he is spending it day and night. So if someone is combined by both, that would be a great bounty and favor from Allah Azza wa Jal. What a beautiful level is the person who is granted that level. Also, as we said, that charity is a proof of your faith. It is purification for the money of those who give it. The hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, who said to the merchants, O merchants, this selling, there is so many laghu and swearing, so purify it with the charity. From the best types of charities is the hidden one. If you show the charities, it is better, and if you give it to the poor, it is better for you, and He will forgive your sins, and Allah is more knowledgeable of what you're doing. And the giving of the charity in hidden, there is a cover for them, and not to embarrass them in front of people, and not to expose them. The charity, a lot of people are very miser with money, and whenever they are old, then he remembered the death, and he knew that there is rise for Allah Azza wa Jal, that he need to spend it in the sake of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said, the best charity that you give it while you're healthy and young, and you are hoping for rich, and not to and you're afraid of poverty, and when you reach a certain piety, then remember, give charity in any time of this life. Ameen. The charity after you do the goodness, and they ask you what to spend, said forgiveness. The the best charity that makes people rich. So the best people you give is the people that you spend on, where they don't need to be asking. To spend on your son, consider that charity in sake of Allah. The Prophet ﷺ said, a man, if he spend on his family, he is seeking its reward, it will be a charity. If the person has given for his family, asking the reward from Allah, he will be rewarded for it. The best four dinars you give a needy, one for this to free a slave, one you spend in the sake of Allah, and one you spend on your family. The best arm is the one that you spend on your family. And the charity on the near, on the relative, it is charity and kinship, showing the kinship. One of the companions used to, the best money he has, it was right there by the masjid. He has given that whole garden, as you know. The Prophet ﷺ told him, I saw that you make it for the relatives. It is a beautiful story. He heard that Allah saying, you will not reach piety until you spend from what you like. So he said, oh Prophet of Allah, the best money I have is the garden of Rayhan. It is a charity for Allah. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal, it's piety. So put it to the Prophet ﷺ any way you want. So he told him, Bakhin is a word of goodness. It is a good trade. He said, I heard what you said. I want you to put it on the relatives. And he put it onto his relatives and his cousins. Because it's double the word of charity and bridging your ties with your kinship. Whomever was an orphan, so the best charity is the charity on the kinship who are in need. Also on the neighbor, and in the sake of Allah. And in the hadith of Abi Dhar, and if you cook something, add more water and give some for the neighbors. The best dinar that you spend on your family, and one on your camel in the sake of Allah, and one on your friends in the sake of Allah. Of course, the best is to spend in the jihad in the sake of Allah. It is the highest and highest level. The last thing, the continuous charity. What happens after somebody dies and his reward continues? If a person died, all his deeds are stopped except for three: continuous charity, a knowledgeable that is beneficial, or a son that is righteous, son that make dua for him. Allah said, those who spend their money in the sake of Allah do not follow it with men and harm. They have a reward from their Lord, and there is no sadness or worry about them. So al-man wal-adha, the pain you could reflect on someone, or the man, which is to show somebody, oh, you did this, it will be among the things that will void that deed. Some of the people, whenever they are making a charity, they show themselves higher than the person they are given to. Oh, I did this and this for you, and he's harming him with that psychology. And Allah, the Almighty, He repeated the ayah, so He will stress on what's after it. Those who spend their money in the sake of Allah and they do not follow what they have spent in men, meaning to remind people that I gave you this or I did this, or do it in an area where you harm others. And the men, it is one of the great sins. It will stop the gratitude, and it will encourage the bad manners. Al-Qurtubi says that the charity that Allah knows from its owner, that He is making men and harm people, it will not be accepted. Then he was told, then Allah will put on the angels imara where He do not write it down, and whomever is doing it, he has a black hand. So we always say that whenever you give, you have a white hand, meaning it's pure, and the one who does the other way around, he got a black hand. It is because he's miser, he is not giving for the sake of Allah. And some of the scholars, they say, whomever made a man and his goodness, his happiness will be gone, and whomever is happy with his work, then his work is doomed. And Ibn Sirin, he heard someone talk another, I've done one too. He said, shut down, there's no goodness in the goods if it is counted. And Ibn Sifan said, when Allah said, do not follow their money of man or harm, a person will be said, I gave you, he did not, was not grateful. From the thing are amazing that is narrated on the Salaf before that, one of them said, he said, oh my son, if you are allowed to take from this, if it is allowed for you, and you strengthen for the sake of Allah, then you are guaranteed that Allah How do you imagine this? If you give someone, you thought if you give him a salam while you're walking, you reminded him of what you did to him. Pass by him as if you don't know him, you didn't see him. So he will not feel burdened that your salam will be look like showing off. So not saying salam to him, it is better than making salam. As if you tell him, you remember I gave you this and this? Remember yesterday I gave you that? If you felt like you are very heavy in your salam, then you need to stop. It is better than the salam itself. Zayd ibn Aslam, she said, the wife, she said, a woman said to Zayd ibn Aslam, you guide me to a man, he goes for the sake of Allah, because they don't go except to eat their fruits. I have a garden, but I want someone who could go to for the sake of Allah. He said, may Allah not have mercy, good bless you, because you have heard them before you give them. These are not people because you have heard them before you give them. The person who give mannan are among the three that Allah will not look at them at the day of judgment. Al-Muslim mannan, and the one who spend he sells his product with false swearing. The three when Allah will not look at them is the one who do not obey his parents, and the one who intoxicated or drunk, and the one who make manan or make remind people of the favor he's doing. Someone say, the boys say that you have destroyed or avoided all this good deeds that you provided for yourself, because the honorable person, the generous person will not is not among those who make men on people. Inshallah, continue to work.
Sir, give me a cookie before I go. I need a fix.